7:30. We've completed executive session with no action to report. And we are resuming the business meeting. As is our tradition, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Trent, can you lead us, or shall we just, we'll lead ourselves and use the flag? Okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States
of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And since we are not present in the building, I don't need to do the emergency evacuation meeting proceedings, but and don't need to remind you about being a no smoking, no bullying campus. So we'll now go start with the board consent agenda. And we have, is there a motion to approve items C1 and C2? Ms. Aruda, and is there a second? Mr. Piccini, are you present? Mr. Trent, are you present?
I'm here, I'll second it.
Okay, Ms. Aruda made the motion, Mr. Piccini seconded it. Any questions or discussion? And so seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, raise your right hand. I have 3 present. I don't know where Mr. Trent is.
He's here, just right there. Just stepped away.
Would you like me to look in the hallway for him?
If you could, thank you.
Okay. He'll be there in 1 second. He's walking down the hallway.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay. We had a motion to accept the minutes and it was seconded. There weren't any questions or discussion. But I did not ask that question that council had suggested be asked, which is, are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, then all in favor of approving the minutes. I have 3 in favor, 4 in favor. So the minutes C1 and C2 are approved. Next would be the superintendent. What happened?
I think we lost your audio for a second, but I think you're back.
I'm back, okay. So did you hear me announce for the clerk that the motion, that the approval passed? Okay, and I said the next item then would be the superintendent's report.
You didn't ask for the no votes.
Oh, thanks for that. So we had 4 in favor and any opposed, 1 opposed. Now I'll make the announcement that it passed with 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you for that correction. Okay, next is superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you. With the rising number of faculty and staff absences due to COVID-19 It has been an increased challenge to keep our high school and middle school open for in-person learning. As a result, the high school and middle school has shifted to remote learning through Friday, January 7th. In-person learning will resume on Monday, January 10th. While on remote, high school students will remain at home and log into their Google Meet through their Google Classroom. All after-school activities will continue to run in person as scheduled with no interruption, and all of our elementary schools will continue with in-person teaching and learning. For the board's information and families' information, meals for the high school and middle school while on remote have been arranged for pickup. 2 days worth of meals for students can be picked up at the high school from 10 a.m. till 12 noon tomorrow. Connected did go out this evening. And to say the least, this has been a very tough week. I want to extend my sincere thanks to faculty and staff who have taken extra coverages, our directors and chairs who have also covered classes and lunch duties, and our principals who are keeping our schools safe for in-person learning. So thank you all. With regard to our COVID numbers, our COVID positive cases reported as of today, we have 471 known COVID positive cases that have been reported to the district. This is up 278 reports from last meeting. Of these 471, 151 are faculty or staff members and 320 are students. Also, as of today, the current count of faculty, staff, students quarantined resulting from close contact in our schools is 1 for faculty and staff, and the current count for students is 2. That's down from 33. So that's a good message that what we're doing in schools is working with regard to quarantining.
Can you just repeat those numbers? You kind of cut out for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. So students and faculty currently on quarantine as a result of close contact. In terms of the faculty, we have 1, and students, we have 2.
And could you also repeat the numbers? You had given the total number of cases, and you said it went up by 278 since our last meeting?
I did, yeah. So 471 known at this point. Remember, this is not a current number. This is a total number reported to the district. So 471 known COVID positive cases that have been reported, 278 up from our last meeting, which is a lot. And of the 471, 151 are faculty and staff, and 320 are students.
And of the total then ran from September 1 until today?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, so when school opened. Okay, and then regarding turning to our New York State weekly testing requirement and looking at the breakdown of employees who's opted out of weekly testing and those who need to be tested. Currently, 82% of our employees have opted out of testing, with 18% opting for testing. So we continue to have slight increases in those that are opting out, meaning, of course, that to opt out, you need to be vaccinated. However, we do have a number of faculty and staff members who are testing and are vaccinated as well. So I don't know how true that is a number to look at in terms of vaccinations. In response to an ongoing pandemic, you may have heard the New York State Education Department recently canceled the administration of our January 2022 Regents exams. Modifications to diploma requirements for students impacted by the cancellation will be made. As a result, Bellport High School will follow a regular class schedule January 25th through 28th. The department has not yet made a decision on the June or August administration of Regents exams and will continue to monitor data related to the impact of this ongoing pandemic. Bellport Middle School arrival and dismissal. Based on student safety concerns received at Bellport Middle School staff observing students' arrivals and dismissals, we remind BMS families to please refrain from making U-turns or 3-point turns on Kramer Street during student drop-off and pickup. We also request that students not be dropped off or picked up on opposite side of the street to avoid students having to cross through traffic. So we thank you for your anticipated cooperation. That has improved. However, for the rest of the week, it's going to improve totally since the kids aren't in school. So we will start taking a look at that again next week when kids return. Mr. Vicini.
I know I've asked before, and I know we haven't done it as far as communicating with village code enforcement on this issue. But with snow expected, I don't know if it'll still be on the ground next week. I know from last year that pickup and drop off gets a little trickier when there's less, when the roads are a little narrower. I don't know how much snow we're going to get, but it's winter time. I could see this getting worse. So, I'd suggest we have ongoing communications with the village.
Okay, thank you. We will. Mr. Ritter?
I agree with Mr. Pacini. I am a parent that drops off every single morning. So I've seen the ugly of the drop off on Kramer Street. And I do anticipate it getting worse as snow is there. So if we can alleviate any problems by contacting the village, since they are the ones that created the problem, I'd like for us to be able to do that. There is definitely improvement from where we were before, but there's still more improvement that needs to be done. I get to see it all every single morning.
Mr. Pacini?
Yeah, on that note, I don't drop off as often as Melissa does. It's just from time to time. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've seen it really bad. I've seen it, better. I saw it improve before break, a little bit over the week before break. I guess my question is, if this really is creating a safety hazard, which I think Melissa and I agree that it is, why are we, why are we, it's the word I'm looking for, beholden to what the village tells us to do if it's putting our students in harm's way during drop-off? Don't we have a greater responsibility to create the safest scenario for our students and families when they're near our buildings?
Sure, but I think by moving the buses totally into the parking lot should alleviate all those concerns. I mean, that was our hope. Unfortunately, we only had a couple of days to really take a look at it because that really happened at the end of school right before the break. Part of the problem was the buses were going in and unloading 3 at a time. So they were staying on Kramer Street, which was causing a lot of the problem. Now the buses are getting all the way into the parking lot. So there's no longer that confusion on Kramer Street. So we're hoping that's going to resolve the problem.
But I guess why can't we? But are the mini buses going to where the parent drop off used to be?
Yes. Yes.
Again, I still don't understand why we have to comply. I really don't. If it's creating, a safety hazard, or if you're saying, I mean, if the issue is the parent drop off, and I feel like the safety on those streets, either the village needs to either enforce their traffic laws on the street and post a code enforcement officer there, or we need to just go back to what we were doing because that was safest for our students and families. I mean, I'm just really frustrated with the village right now because they created a mess for us that's created safety concerns, and they're not even here to help alleviate it. So as we've been good neighbors and complied with their request, it's really still a mess, and it's going to get worse in the winter because nobody's going to want to stick around and wait. Kids are going to want to jump out wherever they can to get into school because it's cold. They're going to be climbing over snowbanks at some point. So I really don't understand why we are compelled to comply.
I agree. Since the bus situation has changed slightly by allowing them to go into the parking lot, we're not seeing as many parents making U-turns and 3-point turns. But unfortunately, one of the biggest concerns on top of the opposite side drop off is that there's not a system. So parents are weaving in and out of that line. So whether it is parents coming out or parents going in, we have traffic issues right in there as well. So beyond just the bus situation, we're having some other situations as well. So I do find, just as Mr. Pacini said, if they're not going to provide somebody there, then we need to go back to, I mean, I've done the middle school drop off for 5 years in a row. This is the worst that I've ever seen it. When we were on South Street, it was a much smoother situation, and we had our own staff running it. Right now, I would not put our staff in the middle of Kramer Street doing that.
Listen, I have not reached out to the mayor to ask to provide code enforcement there. I can do that. I tell you, my concern with that is then we're going to start giving our parents tickets
If they're breaking traffic laws, too bad.
Agreed, because I've seen a million of them breaking traffic laws. So, I mean, to be honest with you, yes, and if they're breaking traffic laws and they're putting our students at jeopardy, then if they deserve a ticket, then they deserve a ticket. And if I were the one breaking the traffic law as I'm dropping off, I deserve the ticket. You'd get a ticket if you were passing a bus with a student on it. So honestly, at this point in time, I see it every single morning. It's as the weather is getting worse, and not only is the weather getting worse, but then you're going to have the additional excitement at the end of the year with middle schoolers just jumping out. It's an accident waiting to happen, and I've vocalized it several times. It needs to get better.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the mayor and see if we can get somebody in there.
Could they even consider making Kramer Street one way during the drop-off hours?
Is that within their?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm
If
trying
it's-
to give some creative.
If it's their road, they
Ideas.
can do whatever they want.
Right. Well,
It-
basically present to them the problem that we're having and ask them how they're going to solve it. That's all I'm saying.
I anticipate that this whole thing started because a resident complained, right, about the buses?
Yeah. It all started because the resident got a ticket, passing a bus.
I can't imagine that those residents are much happier with what's happening right now.
That's the part that's you hit the nail on the head, Melissa. I'm sorry, but you're 100% right. I can't imagine anybody in the village is happy with the way it is now.
Because it's frightful what's happening right now.
So by the next meeting, we'll have a report back about what the village plan is to keep our kids safe and to clear up this problem.
I would hope we could have it by the update tomorrow. I can't imagine I don't know Dr. Gianni's schedule, but reaching out to Mayor Fell shouldn't.
I could reach out to the mayor, but I can't guarantee we're going to have a plan in place by tomorrow.
Oh,
No,
I
but
didn't want to wait till the next meeting to address it if the problem is now.
No,
That's all
I
I'm
was
saying.
not suggesting that, Mr. Pacini, but rather that it would be part of the report 2 weeks from now so that we will know something then.
And I will put it in that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then finally, yesterday, we began distributing the over-the-counter rapid COVID antigen tests that we were provided by New York State Department of Health. These tests are being provided by the state as an additional tool to help prevent the further spread of COVID-19. For the board's information, 557 families have picked up or have scheduled to pick up just under 1,000 test kits. We have left the request survey open and continue to take requests and distribute it at the high school. We're going to do that through Friday for families who may have missed the notice. We continue to get some calls. Unfortunately, well, I don't. But I put my secretary's phone number on the survey, so she's been inundated with calls. So thank you so much, Sarah, for taking care of all of that. But we are getting a lot of folks that have missed the call, so we're going to keep that survey open for a little bit longer. And that is all the announcements that I have, President Hayes.
Well, just to elaborate a little bit about your comment about the tests that were distributed, we have gotten some email from parents that say that the process was, one person described it as flawless. So
It was.
Congratulations to everybody who put this into place.
And I will send those kudos to our high school principal, Ms. Della Rosa, and her team at the high school who put the whole thing together.
It was fabulous. Security down to, it was fabulous. So kudos to the high school for doing that.
Okay. I think we're up to trustee reports.
Well, there's actually, here's a question I'm going to give to the board because the next section is public commentary. And we did get an email from one parent that I copied everybody on, so the board already knows about it. Did you want to have it read out loud? It was, it was information for us. We have the information. How do you want to handle it? Do you want to just acknowledge that we're aware of the comments and we appreciate hearing about it, or have our clerk take the time to read it?
I would request that the board have it read into the record.
Especially since we're on Zoom right now, I think that would only be fair to the community
Okay.
member.
Well, let me just see if our clerk could come back on.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you read the email that came in?
Ms. Hayes, do you want to do the trustee reports first before public commentary though?
Oh, here I am jumping way ahead. Yes, do we have trustee reports? And I'll go in order on my screen. I see Ms. Aruda.
I just want to thank all of the teachers and the faculty and the staff at South Country for all the hard work that's been put in this week. As an educator myself, I understand the trials and tribulations that have come into this week. From the top down, it's been very, very challenging. I don't necessarily know that any district ever wanted to go remote, but here we are. And I want to just sincerely thank everybody for all the hard work that's gone into this, whether in person or in remote right now. You know, we are here again, but I know that they're all doing a fabulous job, so thank you.
Ms. Felice.
Thank you, Madam President. To echo what Melissa had said and what the superintendent had said earlier about our faculty staff, it was just, it's, you know, uncharted territory and unbelievable time. So thank you everybody for what you did. And I just want to confirm that I believe we do have a legislative committee meeting scheduled for the 18th of January. So I'm looking forward to that and discussing what we can do as a committee to help enhance our district. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks for that update. Mr. Trent.
No, I have no report at this time.
Mr. Puccini. Okay, and I have no report except to say I'm really proud of our district and the faculty and staff and administration and the parents and the students that enabled us to get so close to Christmas and still fully open. And to have to go remote for a couple days right before Christmas, we've gotten that far without even having to do it. And I am very grateful to everybody working in the system for keeping it going as well as it's gone, and to be focusing on providing the in-person instruction to our kids. And so hopefully we'll continue in that. And I'm looking forward to next Monday because Dr. Gianni said there will be in-person learning in place on Monday, assuming nothing else happens.
Thank you for quantifying that.
Okay, now I'm up to where I thought we were gonna.
Bren.
Bren, where is she?
Bren's there.
Oh, there she is. Thank you.
Thanks. The Student Council made Newsday for collecting over 1,000 pounds of food during our Thanksgiving food drive alone. In addition, during our Christmas food drive, we were able to collect another 25 boxes of complete meal kits, as well as other food items such as breakfast food, pasta, and soups to add up to over 1,000 pounds of food. We donated this food to local food pantries and the Lighthouse Mission to help support our community between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Despite the remote interference we had before break, we were able to collect at least 50 boxes stuffed with gifts for children in our area. The Student Council did a very good job putting the boxes together shorthanded before the deadline, even though we were remote in the days leading up. The Student Council has been writing letters to the children at our elementary schools from ELFs since the first week of December. The Student Council wrote over 800 letters. We wrote more letters this year than we did in the past 2 years combined. We are trying to fundraise to possibly go to a leadership conference this spring. So we did a reindeer food fundraiser that we sent out to the elementary schools as well. Google Forms posted to Google Classrooms to see student interest in lockers. There have also been QR codes posted around the school. Students have been super excited to get the lockers. They've been talking about how it will make their day easier, not having to carry around a backpack, and now they'll have somewhere to put a jacket. All right, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else before we go to the public commentary?
No, we're good.
Okay. So Ms. Flynn, if you could read that letter now, we'll do that.
Thank you. This letter is from Sarah Cologne. I am respectfully asking that my email be read at the BOE meeting tomorrow, 1/5/22, if that is a possible option. Hello, Dr. Gianni and our Board of Education. Happy New Year, and hope this new year finds you all well. I am writing you all today because even though we are a current remote learning family, I cannot shake my advocacy bone for all of our students and staff in this community. We all know what's going on with this pandemic, so I do not need to show cases and numbers to you all. In getting the January 3rd email from the district, I was literally sick to my stomach on seeing a number of 119 cases for South Country. This is a very high number for our small district, and I am very concerned about our students, teachers, staff, and community. I network out to people all over Long Island and New York State, and I recently learned that Port Washington sent out a survey email giving parents an option to remote learn during this time, while still allowing parents that wish to send their children into in-person school that option as well. I feel that an option for remote learning should be given for those families that wish to keep their children home during this time. This is not an indefinite choice, but one that will ease the minds of many in our district. I understand this is not an easy task and that the district had high hopes that we could return to normalcy, but this is proving not to be true. There are many on the parent pages that are wishing for an optional remote option now. This is an ever-changing situation, and what we started the year off with does not apply at this time, and we need to change how we approach this. I am respectfully asking the district to highly consider doing a temporary remote option for families that wish to keep their children home during this time. It would allow members of our community to feel better for their children while still giving their kids an education, and it will lower the in-person population as well. We have the tools, we need to use them. Please consider what is best for our community. We are South Country strong. Best regards, Sarah Cologne.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item is back to you, Dr. Gianni.
Yes, thank you. So we'll begin our items for discussion. You can see that I did invite Ms. Costa in. Our first item for discussion is the recommended capital reserve project. Administration introduced the board at our last two meetings. Since those meetings, we have received final cost out projections for the capital reserve security camera project. Unfortunately, the numbers reflect a $300,000 increase from the initial projection. As a result, we have pulled the press box from administration's capital reserve project recommendations, so we may support the security camera project. Updated materials have been included in board docs and are currently displaying on your screen. And now I'd like to ask Ms. Costa to present the updated material to the board, and then we'll answer any questions that the board may have. Ms. Costa.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni. And to the board and to the community, let me first ask, are you seeing the first page of the presentation?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great. Again, we are here and we're continuing to speak about possible referendum considerations for our May 17th, 2020 vote day. So the potential capital projects that have been under consideration that we've spoken about for the last few meetings have been an upgrade to the district-wide security system, high school improvements, which mainly are turf field replacement, and window replacement project at Vern Kritz. So actually, you'll notice that the total of the project is of the proposed project under consideration is $4,852,500. As Dr. Gianni had said, We removed the press box because you may notice with the asterisk in our first district-wide upgrade to security system project, it actually increased from our last presentation by $303,500. So for the sake of people who may be tuning in for the first time, I'll just go over what the upgrade to the security system project is. The upgrade to the security system in the district is both to our camera system and to our door access system. Our camera system, we have both the camera and the door access system need upgrades to the software platforms. They're obsolete and we need to upgrade those to be able to use that software. And for the camera system, while the cameras are operational, we do have about 70 cameras that do not work of the 700 that we have. So we need to replace cameras that are not functioning in the district. And we need to add about 50 cameras for dead zones in the district. And what we did since our last meeting is we really met with our architects and engineers. We went over the spots where there are dead zones. We went over the cameras that are down, and they needed to look at it from a perspective of a final cost, which is what we have kept, which we have been speaking about. And the increase in price is related to 3 factors. So the increase in price is related to the software pricing. The software pricing that we had received was under the assumption we were getting a pretty large discount, over $100,000 discount to act quickly. But as we know from my prior meetings, when we deal with the partnership with the state of New York and getting building aid, this is a multi-year process. So the software pricing changed because that act quick pricing is not available. The next element that changed was escalation and camera specific pricing. Escalation means the architects and engineers consistently have to look at, we may not be doing this work for 18 to 24 months. So they have to look at how prices change. So that is one of the factors that they had to address. And the other factor, which was the camera specific, we were able to actually look at the needs of some of the outdoor cameras and indoor cameras and drill down. There are different types of cameras and the needs of those cameras were a little different. We had originally priced out like a generic price to replace a camera. We got into the details and that added additional cost to some of the outdoor cameras that we needed. And the last is soft costs. Soft costs are those items, particularly the architects and engineers have to draw plans, go up to the state, and that is how the state reviews the project and approves the project and partners with us for building aid. So those are all costs to us that were not included in the original estimate. And those are the reasons for the camera system upgrades. The door access system stayed pretty much, well, did stay the same from our last meeting. So the cost of the district-wide upgrade to security systems has now moved to $1.8 million. And our high school project consists mainly of the turf field replacements, which as we know is at the end of its useful life. And we're doing minor work on interior handrails and door replacements. Deciding to do the handrails and the door replacements is what makes our project aidable with the state of New York. And our last project under consideration is the replacement of the windows at Vern Kritz. It would be the last of the elementary schools to have their windows replaced. And that those estimates for both the high school and Vern Kritz were already vetted out by our architects and engineers prior to this meeting. So those are the projects into consideration. And as we spoke about in prior meetings, when we consider capital work, we have to speak about and have an understanding that it's not just what it costs. We also have the benefit of the state partnering with us. And for South Country schools, our building aid ratio with the state is 76.2%. That means for every dollar we spend, they give us back 76.2% of those dollars spent. So in the example in the box on the right, our estimated projects is $4,852,500. If 90% of our projects were aidable, there's always little things sometimes that aren't aidable. So just to be conservative, we're saying 90% of the project would be aidable. That would mean the state would partner with South Country Schools and we would receive back $3,328,000 approximately, which would be a net cost to the district of $1,524,000. And that's how the state partners with us. And that's why things take longer and our architects and engineers need to be involved to build plans that the state will approve. So in addition to partnering with the state, we also have to consider our funding options, how we're going to fund the money, because we fund the project first and then receive building aid from the state subsequent to that. So the estimated project costs are $4,852,500. We already have a capital reserve that the district has put money away in past years. That has a balance in it currently of $2,345,000, which would mean that we need about $2.5 million to complete all these projects. And how would we get there? Well, in looking at this year's specific budget, we already have some one-time savings that we can identify, but let's talk about where we are this year. We estimate that we'll have a fund balance at the end of the year of $8 to $10 million. Each year, the district builds its budget and uses $4 million that we have to replenish. So we would need $4 million of that 8 to 10, and we usually replenish our reserves. The district has pledged to use $3 million in reserves in this year's budget. So we would need to replenish that. That would be $7 million. That would leave us somewhere in a range of $1 to $3 million of excess monies that we could use to fund this $2.5 million. And how do we know that? Early in the year, based on where we are with the pandemic, it's a little early in the year, but we do know some things already. And I do want to note to the board here on the right, even whatever decisions we make, because we'll be making them a little bit in the future as we finalize our fund balance, money that we use in a capital reserve generates money for us in the future. Money that we use to replenish our reserves other than the capital reserve do not generate future money for the district. So financially, once we decide to do capital work, it generates future revenue for us. And how do we know where we're going to stand at the end of this year? Well, there are some things that have already come to light to the district early on in the year, and we will continue to monitor our financial position. These are things that we know of that are favorable savings to the district at this point in time. We went out after we built last year's budget. We went out to bid for our pre-K program. And in doing so, we had prices that now have allowed us to put administrative costs into the grant that were originally budgeted for in our general fund budget. That is a one-time savings for the district. All of these items we're going to speak about are one-time savings for the district, which a perfect use for one-time savings is to do one-time work like capital work. So Chromebooks. We know that we now have a one-to-one initiative in our district, and each year we replace 3 grade levels of Chromebooks. Well, after we built the budget, the federal government came out with a grant. We applied for it. Happy to say that we were approved. So our Chromebooks will be covered by the federal government this year. That leaves a one-time savings in our budget this year for Chromebooks. And also when we were building the budget last year, we didn't know where we would be with our students coming back to school. So we continued to build in our after school program that we paid for through BOCES, $250,000. And as it turned out, when our pre-K provider, the Y, bid on our pre-K program, they also said they would provide the after-school program for the district, and they are doing that. So we built in this cost for BOCES for this year that we will not be using those dollars. And we do know what's plaguing the transportation in our district and really all districts across the island. There's staffing shortages. So already we've identified, we have tight buses because there's driver shortages, and those monies are a one-time savings. We probably would have expanded our busing routes this year if there were more bus drivers available. So that is a savings we've identified. And the last savings that we know of already this early in the year is we negotiated with 2 of our bargaining units for a deferral. And we settled that earlier, but we had built it into our budget for this year. And we will not need those funds. On the same side of the coin, just to be transparent, there also are a couple of things where we have additional costs. One of them was the decision for the district to do a remote learning option this year. That remote learning option is through BOCES, and it's costing the district $650,000 this year. We built in $300,000, so we have an additional cost of $350,000. In full disclosure, that money will gain aid, just not in the 21-22 school year. We will see BOCES aid on that additional cost to our district. So net, our savings and our additional costs identified right now are about $1.2 million over what we thought. And there probably and maybe additional savings as the year goes on. So that's just letting everyone know that how we would fund the project would be using our capital reserve and using one-time identified savings in this year's budget. So where are we now? We're here today at our January meeting, hopefully to finalize our project list. We will do another final review with BBS just to go over things probably next month. We'll draft referendum language in February also. We'll revise our fund balance estimates because we will have to transfer those excess funds in our budget into our transfer to capital reserve lines. We'll have to do that as, as a district. And that's where we are. And then we will vote on that in our May vote. Our public will vote on this project list. And
Thank
here we
you.
are with questions.
I'm looking at the little boxes of my board members.
Oh, you want
Is
to,
any-
you want to
you want to undo it so
Yep.
that we can see?
There we go.
There we go. Does any board member have a question about all of this? Mr. Trent?
Yes, I have two questions. The first one is, do you know what year or years, Ms. Costa, that the state will reimburse us for what we spent on this project?
They do. When the project is approved, they determine the estimated useful life for each of the projects. It's
Mhm.
pretty standard. Many projects, like our window project, for example, will have a 15-year estimated useful life. And the state aid will be paid over the estimated useful life. Now, security upgrade projects, well, I don't know what they'll approve ours at, but it could have a 5-year useful life because of the way technology is. And then the aid for that portion and that project that approved will be paid over 5 years. So each one of those projects will be individually approved by the state with them determining what the useful life is for the project.
Okay, so we're spending $4.8 million on the project, and we're not getting all of that money back next year. We're getting it back spread over 5-10 years or so.
Yeah, the useful life of the project is so that if you do borrow money to pay for a project, which we are doing a smart financial move by not borrowing money, which incurs interest and additional costs for the district, that you would borrow your money to align it to the useful life of the project. So as you had a payment for debt, for if you pay your principal and interest, it would be aligned to the state paying you their aid. And that's how the useful life is determined, so that you can go out and borrow on the bond market to match that.
Mm-hmm. So my second question is, how final are these numbers? The costs for the interior door handles or the turf field, or are these numbers final, or are they subject to change in the future?
How it works is the referendum would identify the final costs that we could spend on these projects. It would list all the projects that we're doing and give an authorization up to the 4,852,000. I think that's the number. And it would give that authorization. We still later on, after the state approves all the projects and they come back and forth with us with any changes that may need to happen, we still then need to go out to formal bid.
Mm-hmm.
And formal bid is where, we call it the rubber meets the road. It's when you really know the final cost for your project. But we have no way. That's why the architects build in escalation costs, because they assume things will escalate. So an example is when we did our window project we did our last window project at Kramer. Coincidentally, we bid right after we closed in March for the pandemic. And we got very favorable rates because contractors, I think, were afraid that maybe the world was going to shut down, and we got very favorable rates. We could not have predicted that. We saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on that project just because the timing of the bid. So they do build in escalation, but we really won't know final costs until we go and bid that project, which will probably not be until sometime next year, this time next year.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
More questions? Ms. Felice?
Thank you very much for that presentation, Ms. Costa. Do we have any other projects that we're currently being reimbursed for, as you explained, over the useful life?
Yeah, our last big bond issue that the district did, we're still being paid aid on all of those projects. Every year when we get the state aid runs from the governor's office and then the final legislative state aid runs, there's a building aid line in there, and that is the sum of all the projects we've done. Like, we're still being paid on projects that we did years ago, because the useful life was determined by the state. We went out and bonded that money, which we do pay that bond issue. We see that when we develop the budget, but we do have an offset to that of building aid that's coming in.
And you spoke of an $8 to $10 million surplus, you believe? Was that the number you said?
Yes.
And so how certain are you of that surplus, since this time last year, we were looking at up to a $15 million deficit?
Well, our surplus is generated to also, that surplus, some of that money is accounted for in the sense that we need to make up our fund balance and our reserves every year. And then we are looking like we're going to have a little over that. I'm certain to the sense that things are changing they're very fluid right now, but it seems like we're moving in a direction of closing down and less even happening for our kids than more. So I don't see the busing situation changing. If anything, I see that staying the same and holding its own. So some of those estimates, while yes, I anticipated like a busing savings for the whole year, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the way it plays out. If anything, those struggles continue to be real for those organizations. And many of the other items that I've already identified are things that are final, like our Chromebooks being paid for by the federal government for 1 year. We already know that that's approved. And we'll continue. If we have to do additional costs for something related to the pandemic, we will continue to review that.
And it's important to note too, in that a lot of the security issues, the security cameras and the software, all of that is because technology and the equipment becomes obsolete. And we can't purchase the same replacement, just like we couldn't with the Chromebook chargers. So much of the costs that school districts incur is out of our control, because technology changes to such a point that we have to replace or just get new equipment, because we can't buy replacement parts for what we already have.
That's very true. And like we know, the useful life on some of this is much less than it would be for like a window project, but it's in an interest for South Country would be to do these in capital project type work, even if they're every year and maybe not, if we pay something out of our regular general budget, we don't get state aid on it. But if we do a capital project, they partner with us. So some of these projects, it's in our interest to make sure we're saving money in a capital reserve every year, a little at a time. And when we get to a certain point, we saved enough money, we can do another technology or security upgrade, because likely is in 5 years, we'll need another security upgrade for the district. And those are things we can build in the budget, moving money into a capital reserve, but we won't really be spending it for 5 years because we want the state's partnership. That's important when we do this work.
So Ms. Costa, Ms. Felice, are you finished with your question?
Yes.
I would like to, budget for the security upgrades, and if a couple cameras, fail, we have that money budgeted, so we're not hit with that $1.2 million fee because we have, a bunch of cameras out, no door fobs working. We will
absolutely address having broken cameras and fixing them. We're talking about large infrastructure changes to the security system. Yes, a down camera should be replaced immediately. I agree.
Excellent. Thank you.
And just to tie in your comment about how the reimbursement is over the life of the project, and how that was true based on what Ms. Felice asked about the older projects. And they're coming toward the end of their useful life also, correct? And I think that in the next meeting, you're going to give us a presentation about what to anticipate when we come up for a new bond to do any of the big ticket items. Not just the capital reserve that we're talking about tonight, but long range.
I don't think we decided on January meeting for that. I think we're looking at more like February for that. For the deep dive into the 5-year plan?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be later in the year. It won't be January 19th.
Did I say next me? I said next.
Oh, my mistake.
I think we're talking about 2 dates in March and May.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about, but yes, that is a plan.
Right, but this to clarify that what we're discussing now is a a fiscally responsible use of our capital reserve and to maximize any state aid that can be generated from it, to take care of items that need to be done now. And that's separate and apart from the long-range planning that's going to be done over the next relatively little while.
Perfectly said, yes.
Okay.
Okay, any
Thank
other
you.
questions on the project from the board? We would like, we'd like a nod of approval so we could begin planning for preparing the resolutions, et cetera, which you'll be approving at a later meeting.
I see, let's see, it looks like, Mr. Trent, yes, no?
Yeah, I guess. I really don't see the window replacement as an absolute need. But, you know, since we're being reimbursed for that, I guess I'll be in favor of it.
Okay, Mr. Pacini, did you want to give? Yes, okay, then, thank you for the presentation and for moving this one step further.
Just before we move on, I can't stress enough how important I think the replacement window project for Vern Critz is. It's absolutely essential. And all you have to do is go look at Frank P. Long and Kramer Street to see the difference. Makes a world of difference. So I would absolutely want to see that move forward.
Okay, thank you all, and thank you, Ms. Costa.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to our next item. And my next item is a couple of COVID related items. And one of them, I am going to ask for the board to consider some action, but I'm going to start at the top with the family test kits that have been provided by New York State Department of Health as an additional tool resource to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. I think I mentioned earlier that we received some 4,000 tests, just enough for our students. As mentioned earlier, we began distributing these tests yesterday. 557 families have picked up or are scheduled to pick up some 1,000 test kits. Each of these test kits have 2 tests in them. We have left the survey open, and we will continue to monitor and leave the high school open for families to be able to pick up test kits who may have missed the initial notice or needed another date to be able to pick up. We also delivered a number of tests for families who were not able to pick up. And I think some 60 families got tests delivered over the last couple of days. Okay, in addition to those test kits, the county provided us test kits for what they term the rapid return of students. This is for symptoms at school, but no close contact. So these are instances where students have symptoms that could be allergies or a common cold, but not COVID related. We received 60 tests from Suffolk County, which they got from New York State for that purpose. The next item is test to stay, and this is an item that I would be asking the board to consider for approval. Test to stay policy and plan, Suffolk County Department of Health has adopted test to stay. Some of our folks in our community may have heard about it. It's been talked about in the media for some time because New York State had approved it some time ago. Suffolk County just approved it. Test to stay is a strategy which allows asymptomatic, unvaccinated, school-based close contacts avoid school exclusion. Not other restrictions of quarantine, just school inclusion, by testing negative through a series of tests over 7 days. And I remind, again, this applies only to school-based exposures, so which are minimal, as you know, because of our universal masking and the protocols that we have. Administration is recommended approving test to stay. We have offered the attached test to stay plan in board docs for your review and approval. And before I move on, I think I'd like to ask the board to ask any questions or move on this item because the next item is a little different.
Any questions from board members about the test to stay proposal? Mr. Pacini.
Not necessarily test to stay, but I do have a COVID related question. So if you want me to wait until after we vote on this.
Yeah, would you please?
Okay, yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Good. If there are no questions, I'd ask the board to consider approving the plan and policy that is in board docs for your review.
Is there a motion to, is your hand a question or you anticipating the motion?
I would like to make the motion.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try to state it first. Is there a motion to approve the test to stay plan that administration has just recommended? And Ms. Felice, you're making the motion, and a second by Mr. Pacini. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's, let's see, I have 4 yes. Are there any no votes? And 1 no vote. So the approval is granted.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pacini, you had a question before I move on?
Yeah, I did think, I know we talked about an exec because we needed advice from counsel, but I do think we need to talk publicly about not moving forward if that's what without not having the recommendation to reduce the quarantine by 5
that
days.
was my next item.
Oh, it is. Okay, I just want to make sure. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So what Mr. Pacini began to introduce for me was the return to work during isolation, another item that has been approved by New York State and Suffolk County. The board and obviously community has probably heard much in the news regarding the shortening of isolation period to allow employees return to work in 5 days where there is a critical staff shortage. There's no doubt that we are experiencing such a shortage at the high school and the middle school. In fact, yesterday, the Department of Health has updated their guidance once again to try to clarify this return to work during isolation. However, given the continued questions, administration is not prepared to recommend to the board to consider shortening isolation as a result of the New York State guidance at this time. I will continue to monitor it and review it and review the matter until such time that I think it's something in our good interest to do. Quite frankly, I don't know if moving from 10 to 5 would even help us at this point. It's just not worth it. There's just too many questions going on. There's too many things tied to coming back, wearing of masks, no symptoms. There's just so much to have to be able to follow. And quite frankly, I can't see bringing somebody back into our schools that it's possibly going to spread COVID further. I mean, I just assume stay with the 10 days as we currently have. So did that help, Mr. Pacini?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess, I guess, like I said, if it's something at a disposal that can potentially help keep our buildings running, which keeps our kids in person, within person instruction. I guess I'm not understanding what the difficulty is. I mean, are there that many stipulations for somebody coming in on a shortened quarantine? Because you mentioned masks, but we already have that. They have to wear masks anyway.
Sure. So initially it was just come back. Then I don't know if it was a CDC or another government official that said, well, maybe we need to rethink it and maybe you can test back. So because of all of these things are so new, I'm just simply not prepared to say to you, let's get involved in it, because quite frankly, I'm not sure how I would implement it. And until such time, it's a little bit more concrete and it looks safe to me. I may bring it back to the board. It's just that tonight, I'm not prepared to bring it back. Again, the Department of Health just sent out clarification this afternoon on it. So I wasn't even able to look at that in any great depth at this point.
So would you say the issue is that there's lack of clarification as to how this should work?
Correct. And also a change in how it should work, right? So it was initially thought of no test, and now I'm hearing that maybe there is a test, but I'm not even sure of that.
Okay. I guess my fear is, if we continue with this issue and, there's too much time between now and the next meeting to reconsider if clarification clears up, I would just hate to continue to a point where hopefully next week we don't have the same issues keeping our secondary buildings open. But it's just, it's unfortunate that this isn't cleared up from the governing bodies to really be able to implement Because, you know, if somebody's done and they're symptom free, for us to still keep them out seems like, you know, difficult. So, okay.
I understand. But if it does become clear, I'll be happy to bring it back. Be happy.
Okay.
Okay. And my next item is the reopening plan. Administration is recommending updating the reopening plan, something we probably should have done a little bit ago. And it very simply is a result of the quarantine reductions with regard to domestic and international travelers. As you know, we have adopted, or we initially adopted, Suffolk County's guidance. Back in June, that guidance was changed. We probably should have pulled that one piece out at that time. I did not. So I'm simply asking the board to pull that one piece out with regard to restrictions for travelers. And the reopening plan is posted in board docs, and I think it's on page 10. And it's simply the exclusion of one short paragraph in there. So I ask the board's consideration for approving that change.
Is there a motion to approve the recommended change to the reopening plan that's on page 10 regarding traveling? Is there, Ms. Felice made the motion, a second by anybody going to second it? Mr. Pacini. Okay. Got three people all who seconded it, but I saw Mr. Pacini slightly first. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Unanimously approved.
Okay, thank you. And that's all the items that I have with regard to COVID. I see Mr. Trent has his hand up.
Yes, I have a COVID-related question. Well, like a Chromebook-related question, I guess. Do you, by any chance, Dr. Johnny, know how many students in the high school or middle school who don't have Chromebooks at all, or don't have Chromebooks because they're broken?
No, I don't. Everyone should have a Chromebook, except for some kids that may have damaged it on their own and are borrowing Chromebooks, but I believe they do have Chromebooks.
Okay, can you look into that and just give me an exact number? Because I've gotten 2 phone calls from families who their child broke the Chromebook and they cannot afford it. They quoted like $300 replacement fee.
Yes.
For the Chromebook. So if you can just look into that and give the board an exact number of how many of those cases there are.
Are you talking about just the high school?
High school and middle school at the moment, because those are the ones who are remote, and the students are going to, you know, heavily rely on the Chromebook. So.
Sure.
Thank you.
And our last item for discussion is discussion on form of board minutes. And I think I'm turning that over for the boards for your discussion.
Okay, that is coming up because we do have a policy in place, but it hasn't been looked at now for almost 10 years. And I'm thinking that it ought to be looked at again, because in the last 10 years, there've been so many changes in terms of you know, communication and technology and how we're doing things, and, you know, getting better organized as a board. So that's why this is on the agenda. It's up now for discussion, and I see Mr. Trent's hand.
Yes, Ms. Hayes, what policy were you talking about just now?
It's 1530.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and section 1000, and it's code number 1530. And I think the procedure is normally, Dr. Gianni, you would turn this over to the Strategic Planning Committee for review.
I can do that.
And advice to the board.
I can certainly do that.
So, Ms. Hayes, were you intending to talk about trustees' comments and how they will be reflected in the minutes?
Well, it actually made me start thinking that we probably ought to look at not just the minutes, but also the agenda policy. Again, it's a very dated one. And, you know, if we have the strategic planning, they could look into it. So it would, they kind of go together in a way, Mr. Trent, the way I see it. And it would have to do, and specifically with regard to trustee comments and minutes, if we look at what the policy says right now, it's not intended that, it doesn't say that the minutes are supposed to serve the function of a transcript. We already have a transcript because since we're doing YouTube, there's an automatic transcript generated. And the minutes, you know, we did get the advice of counsel about what is required under the law, the things that need to be shown, and in just to make it very simple, the minutes are supposed to record the action that is taken by the board. So, you know, every time we vote and we take, you know, the count of how many people vote for something and how many vote against it, and what the resolution was. That's what has to be in the minutes. So I also am repeating what I said earlier, that when I notice things like this that are very dated, and I just think it's a good idea to have them reviewed.
No, I agree. I just asked that question because from my recollection, a couple meetings ago, a trustee asked for items to be placed on the record verbatim. And from my knowledge, I don't believe that we properly addressed that. So that's why I asked that question.
Well, that's something that could be considered, you know, by the advisory committee. And, you know, if you look at the policy as it's written now, instead of having it right in the minutes, it provides that they'll be referred to in the minutes and filed in district office. So, you know, this would be something that the strategic planning committee could evaluate as to which is the better way to go.
But now we are currently, well, now the clerk just kind of summarizes what trustees and the superintendent says during their commentary portions. So, you know, I feel like personally, if a trustee said, instead of that, can I have, you know, this letter just placed in that spot, you know, I feel like, you know, I would personally be okay with that. And then if we wanted to, down the road, spend some time in actually evaluating the policy to see if we can kind of make this process more fluid in the future, that would be fine too, but probably timely. You know, we just approved the minutes without the particular trustee's comments on the record. So.
And I'd also, you know, just in order for people to be able to have a full discussion, had asked for some guidance about how parliamentary procedure figures into doing that, and what is the procedure to go through for having additions made to the minutes or amendments made to the minutes. And we got it in writing in a memo earlier, or it was this afternoon, earlier today. So it's been a learning process. And again, because it's been such a long time since any of this has been evaluated, have it looked into again. So to summarize, is the board in agreement that that these policies, I would say both the ones about minutes and also the one about the agenda, to go to strategic planning for review, just to make sure that they're current. I see nods. I think I've got nods.
Madam President, is that agenda format 1511?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey,
move on.
move on.
Okay, moving on to curriculum. Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 and G2.
Is there a motion to approve items G1 and G2? Ms. Aruda, Mr. Trent, second. Questions, discussion? You see none, all in favor? All hands are raised. It's approved.
Moving on to personnel, administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H11.
Is there a motion to approve personnel changes listed in H1 through H11? Mr. Pacini made the motion, second by Ms. Aruda. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? I've got, okay, all five in favor. Those items are approved.
And moving on to personnel, administration recommends approval of, business. Moving on to business, administration recommends approval of business items reflected in I1 through I3.
Is there a motion to approve business items I1 through I3? Ms. Aruda made the motion, second by Ms. Felice. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? That item is approved unanimously.
Okay, that's all the items that I have.
I don't think we have any non-agenda public commentary items.
None.
No. Okay, thank you. So now closing remarks, and I'll start with Bryn Johnson.
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Aruda,
Nothing, thank you.
okay, Mr. Pacini. Thing, Ms. Felice. You're on. I'm not sure.
I said nothing, thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, nothing. Okay, thank you. Mr. Trent,
No, I don't have anything.
I don't have anything either. I'm just wishing everybody all the best for the rest of the week, and let's hope that Monday we see things be a little easier for everybody. So we need that motion to adjourn by Mr. Trent
Got it.
and second by Ms. Aruda. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you all very much.
Have a good night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.
Stay healthy.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.